Celtic supporters, gather round because this is one of those stories that mixes nostalgia, honesty, and the kind of inside detail that only comes from someone who lived the game at the very top level. Joe Hart, a man who carved his name into the history of Celtic with both his presence on the pitch and his character off it, has been speaking about what it was like to play alongside a certain striker who once struggled to adapt when thrown into the intensity of first-team football in Europe. And when Hart speaks, you can tell it comes from experience, because his own career had highs, lows, and moments where he had to rebuild himself, something Celtic fans know all too well after watching him revive his career in Glasgow. Now, Hart was reflecting during Celtic's clash against Red Star Belgrade, and he dropped a little gem of a story about Kelechi Iheanacho, a player who recently joined the Hoops, but who, many years ago, was still trying to find his feet as a youngster at Manchester City. Hart explained that when Iheanacho first came through, he was not just relatively unknown. He was completely unknown. And when you are a teenager making that leap, it is never straightforward. There are new languages, new cultures, and the sheer reality of training every day with world-class players who demand standards at the very highest level. For Iheanacho, those first weeks were bumpy. Hart said that he actually missed a few training sessions and seemed, in his words, not quite with it. Think about that for a moment. A young player, brought from another continent, suddenly catapulted into one of the most competitive footballing environments in the world, and his head was spinning. Hart wasn't criticizing him in a cruel way. In fact, he was acknowledging the reality. We have all seen players who need time to understand the demands of European football. Some never adjust. Others, like Iheanacho, eventually figure it out and carve a career for themselves. Hart made it clear that the Nigerian striker did just that. He eventually settled, had important moments at Manchester City, earned a move to Leicester City, and now finds himself wearing the green and white of Celtic. What is striking is how Hart relates Iheanacho's early struggles to the wider journey of a footballer. He mentioned those difficult months, sometimes even difficult years, where nothing seems to click, and yet, with persistence, belief, and the right opportunities, a player can come through stronger. For Iheanacho, those experiences shaped him, and Hart believes he is now in a very different place mentally and professionally. That's a powerful reminder to Celtic fans who may have been skeptical when Iheanacho was unveiled after a somewhat frustrating summer transfer window. Now, let's address that point, because the summer business at Celtic has been under heavy scrutiny. Many supporters felt the club failed to bring in the attacking reinforcements Brendan Rodgers desperately needed. Targets like Kasper Dolberg slipped away, and for a while it looked like Celtic would enter another European campaign underprepared in the forward department. And then, after the window had technically closed, came the surprise arrival of Iheanacho. It was not the signing fans expected, and not one that immediately erased concerns. But what it did do was add a player with Premier League and international pedigree to Rodgers' options. What makes the situation more fascinating is that despite being one of the marquee arrivals, Iheanacho has already found himself benched at times. Rather than being seen as a negative, this actually points to something encouraging: depth in the attacking department. For a club that has often been criticized for relying too heavily on one or two strikers, seeing someone like Iheanacho fighting for his place suggests Rodgers finally has competition up front. It is a message that nobody, no matter their reputation, will simply walk into the starting 11 without proving themselves. But let's not sugarcoat the frustration of the fan base. Alongside Iheanacho, Celtic brought in Jamai Simpson-Pusey on loan from Manchester City and Shin Yamada from Japan, yet neither of them is registered in the squad for the Europa League group stage. That means 4 of the summer signings are missing as Celtic prepare for tough European nights. And supporters are asking a fair question. How can a club of Celtic's size, with the financial resources it has, end up in this situation? These European campaigns are meant to be stages where Celtic show their ambition, not where they look underprepared. The frustration is magnified when you consider how passionate the Celtic support is and how they always demand that the club match their energy with serious intent in the transfer market. Rodgers, for his part, has to work with the tools he's been given, and he will try to mold this group into a side capable of competing. But when names like Adam Ida and Kyogo Furuhashi have already departed, it is no wonder fans are restless, because replacing that firepower was never going to be simple. And this brings us back to Iheanacho. His story of missing training sessions as a youngster could easily be painted as a warning sign, but actually it feels more like proof of growth. The version of Iheanacho Celtic have today is not the raw teenager Hart remembers. This is a player with international experience, with goals in the Premier League, with the scars and lessons from a career that has tested him. Celtic are banking on that maturity to shine through, because they know he cannot afford to drift or disappear at this stage of his career. If he is switched on, committed, and able to rediscover his best, he could solve one of Rodgers' biggest problems this season. And Hart's perspective is valuable here because he understands better than most what it means to reinvent yourself. Remember, this is a goalkeeper who went from being unwanted in England to lifting trophies and becoming adored in Scotland. When he says that a player can rediscover himself at Celtic, he speaks from lived experience. Fans might not have been overjoyed when Iheanacho was unveiled, but football has a funny way of rewriting narratives, and the next few months will be crucial in shaping his Celtic story. What makes this entire debate around Iheanacho and the transfer business so compelling is how it ties into the bigger picture of what Celtic are trying to become in Europe. Domestically, the Hoops have been dominant for years, but when it comes to testing themselves on the continental stage, the same criticisms keep resurfacing. The club's recruitment policy, the lack of early deals in the window, the gamble of waiting too long to get players in. All of these decisions have real consequences when the group stage of the Europa League or Champions League comes around. Fans know that, and that's why the noise has grown louder. They are desperate to see Celtic not just competing for league titles at home, but actually going toe-to-toe with some of the best in Europe without the constant excuse of being underprepared. Now, when you strip it down, that's what makes Hart's comments about Iheanacho resonate. He talked about those tough months and the struggles of adjusting, and that mirrors Celtic as a club in Europe. They dominate in Scotland, but too often look like the young player who has not quite figured it out when they step onto the European stage. You can feel the frustration in the terraces because the supporters believe Celtic should not be learning how to walk at this level anymore. They should be running. They should be making statements. Yet here we are again, with questions about squad depth, about whether the board backed the manager properly, and about whether the team has the quality to make it out of the group. The match against Red Star Belgrade is a perfect example of this balancing act. On one hand, you have the chance to make a real statement against a respected European opponent. On the other, you go into it knowing that several summer signings are not even eligible to play. That contradiction is what drives the Celtic faithful mad. They pack stadiums, they travel across Europe, they sing their hearts out, and in return they want to see a club that gives Brendan Rodgers the tools to deliver nights of glory rather than nights of regret. And let's talk about Rodgers himself. He is a manager who knows all about pressure, about expectation, and about what it means to carry the weight of a massive club on his shoulders. His return to Glasgow was never going to be simple, not after the way his first spell ended, but he came back with a point to prove. The irony is that even a manager of his caliber can only do so much when the squad is not shaped in the way he wants. He will get the maximum out of these players, no doubt, but imagine what he could do if the board were more ruthless and efficient in the transfer market. That's the conversation fans are having in pubs, on forums, and outside the stadium. Still, football has a way of throwing up unexpected heroes, and perhaps Iheanacho will be one of them. His story is fascinating because it already has so many twists, from Nigeria to Manchester, from Leicester to Glasgow, and each chapter has been about proving himself. When Hart says he missed training sessions and looked lost as a teenager, it makes the current version of Iheanacho even more intriguing. This is not a player without flaws, but rather a player who has lived through failure, criticism, and the harsh realities of the game. That sort of journey either breaks you or makes you, and Celtic are betting it has made him. Imagine the scene. It is a cold European night, parquet under the lights, the crowd in full voice, and Iheanacho stepping up in the big moment to deliver. That is what supporters dream of. That is why they put their faith in players even when doubts exist. Because Celtic has always been about those magical nights where someone unexpected rises to the occasion. Think of the legends who wrote their names into history by producing on the biggest stage. Iheanacho has the chance to write his own version, and Hart's comments only underline how far he has come from that raw youngster who was not quite tuned in. Of course, it is not all about one player. The issues run deeper, and the summer business left gaps that are still glaring. The fact that Shin Yamada and Jamai Simpson-Pusey are not even available for the Europa League group matches is baffling. Why bring in players if they cannot be used in the fixtures that define Celtic's season? That question is being asked again and again by fans who feel the board has prioritized balance sheets over football ambition. And in modern football, supporters see through that. They know when their club is being bold and when it is being cautious. And right now, too many feel Celtic are being cautious at the very moment when boldness is required. The expectation in Glasgow is unique. Celtic Park is not just another stadium. It is a fortress, a stage that has hosted some of the most unforgettable European nights in football. The supporters demand players who can handle that pressure, who can match the intensity of 60,000 voices roaring them on. That is why Hart's words carry weight, because he has been there, he has felt it, and he knows what it takes. He also knows that players like Iheanacho, who have been tested in the Premier League, have no excuse not to rise to that challenge. This is not about adapting anymore. This is about delivering. And if Rodgers can shape Iheanacho into the player he believes he can be, suddenly Celtic's attacking options look far healthier. You have the prospect of rotation, of competition, of players pushing each other to higher levels. That is the kind of environment where breakthroughs happen, where someone seizes the opportunity and makes themselves undroppable. Fans might not have been thrilled by the late arrival of Iheanacho, but football is judged on the pitch, not in the press room. One run of good performances, one big goal in Europe, and suddenly the narrative changes. There is also the symbolic side of it. Celtic have often been accused of lacking ambition in the transfer market, but signing someone with Iheanacho's background sends a message that the club is still capable of attracting players who have operated at the highest level. It is a statement that says, even if not everything is perfect, Celtic can still pull players with serious experience and quality. The key now is to turn that potential into results, because potential alone will not silence the doubters. So, as the team prepares for more European challenges, there is a sense of cautious optimism mixed with simmering frustration. Supporters will never stop demanding more, because that is the Celtic way. They want nights of drama, nights of celebration, nights where they can say they saw their team stand tall against the best. And while there are plenty of reasons to be skeptical, there are also glimmers of hope. Players like Iheanacho, Rodgers' tactical nous, and the unbreakable bond between the fans and the club. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. A bombshell has rocked the Scottish Premiership as whispers from within Celtic's inner circle suggest trouble far deeper than fans might have imagined. LIEL ABADA, one of the club's brightest stars, has reportedly described the Celtic dressing room as toxic and disunited, sparking a flurry of speculation over the club's internal dynamics. While the comments have yet to be officially confirmed, sources close to the Israeli winger hint that tensions among players and staff have been simmering for months, only now bubbling to the surface. ABADA, known for his electric pace and eye for goal, has become a focal point in the side's recent struggles. Insiders suggest that disagreements over tactics, training intensity, and even leadership roles within the squad may have contributed to a fractured atmosphere. Some whispers even suggest that veteran players have been at odds with the management team, creating a rift that could affect performances on the pitch. The alleged remarks have sent shockwaves through supporters groups, with social media alight with speculation about which players are caught up in the drama and whether the unrest could prompt a summer exodus. Though Celtic's official channels have remained tight-lipped, the rumor mill refuses to slow. If true, ABADA's blunt assessment could represent a turning point for the Hoops, who have struggled to find consistency in recent months. The winger's candid take has also reignited debates over squad harmony and whether managerial intervention is required to restore unity. Rival clubs are surely watching closely, eager to exploit any weakness and perhaps tempt a disgruntled talent away. For now, fans can only wait for clarity, but one thing is certain. If the dressing room really is as divided as ABADA's comments suggest, Celtic face more than just the usual Scottish Premiership challenges. They may be battling internal chaos as well. The coming weeks could reveal whether this is a momentary flare-up or the beginning of a major shake-up at one of Scotland's most storied clubs. Hello, fan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.